everybody, this is Bruce here. Welcome to my YouTube channel, Traveling with Bruce. Please subscribe to my channel today and become a key supporter of Traveling with Bruce by clicking the Patreon link. Enjoy the video. Hey everybody, it's Bruce here with Traveling with Bruce. How you doing today? Today I've got a story for you that has to do with time travel. I'm going to take you back in time and tell you a story that happened to me. And I hope you like it. It has to do with the day that I stalked Wayne Gretzky, the greatest hockey player in the NHL. Most points ever scored, most goals ever scored. He's a legend. Retired now. But this is back in 1980 when he was about 20 years old. And the teaser line is, I stalked Wayne Gretzky. Now, it's not that bad. Anyway, here it is. In 1980, in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, the Calgary Flames had just come up from Atlanta to play in Calgary. They had moved the entire franchise because the franchise was a disaster in Atlanta. And for the first 3 years that the Flames were in Calgary, they ended up playing in a place known as the Stampede Corral. Now, in today's National Hockey League or NBA or any other league, there would be no chance in hell a franchise could ever go from one city where the rink might hold, say, 15, 17,000 people, and then end up in a barn like the Calgary Stampede Corral that held 8,100 fans. But that was the situation in 1980 because the Atlanta Flames were bleeding money, bleeding millions of dollars a year, and the owners just had enough. They just couldn't afford to pay it, and the league didn't want to carry that kind of a loss, so they decided, heck, why don't we just move the team to Calgary? They're desperate for hockey there. The Edmonton Oilers are 180 miles north. The Vancouver Canucks are just to the west. Instant rivalry. Calgary hates Edmonton. Edmonton hates Calgary. This is going to be great. Screw this. We're doing it. We're going to put the franchise in there, even though they only have 8,000 seats for an arena, because Calgary was just awarded the 1988 Winter Olympics, and they're building a brand new Olympic stadium called the Saddledome, which will hold 20,000 fans in 3 years. So we'll take the short-term pain for the long-term gain, and the Flames ended up in Calgary. It's a quick recap there. Now, the building, the Corral, was such an amazing place. It's still standing today, although I think it's set for demolition in the not-too-distant future. It was built in 1950, and it's like the old-time hockey rinks in Canada and in the U.S. You had your seating, your rink in the middle, and you used it for concerts or car shows or whatever else you had to do. But under the stands was where the concourse was, and that's where you got your refreshments, and when you need to go to the bathroom, you went down there. Well, when the Flames came to town, they needed their own dressing room, and they couldn't put the Flames in the dressing room that they had there because it was, gosh, it would be so tight and so constricted that the Flames would hardly be able to move around. These big grown-up guys, maybe for teenage hockey players like under junior A hockey you could get away with it, but not for the pros. So the Flames had built themselves or installed for themselves a little building beside the corral to act as their dressing room, and they literally would walk through the concourse. They'd bring carpeting out between the periods, and the players would walk in single file through the crowd to get to the ice and back every period and after each game. It was truly something. It was the closest you could ever get to a professional hockey team in the real season. But for the visitors, it wasn't so luxurious. The visitors had to use the visitors' dressing room that had always been used for all these junior A hockey teams. And they were located in the corner of the rink. And the coaches used to have to walk across the ice from their bench all the way across to the diagonal corner and get heckled by the fans, beat both directions. And the players would end up going into the corner of the building, and they would go onto the stands where their dressing room was, and that's where they hung out. Okay, so there's a lay of the land for you. Now, coming back to Wayne Gretzky. Here's the situation. It was 1980, and it was a preseason hockey game. And a friend of mine got me 2 tickets to the game, so I went with my wife, and it was intermission time. So I asked her what she wanted. She told me to get some popcorn, and I had to go to the bathroom, so I said, great, I'll take care of it. I went to the bathroom, got some popcorn, and I was in the concourse area when all of a sudden, out of the corner of my eye, I noticed over here was a young man in a 3-piece suit walking through the crowd, having just come through a corridor where I knew the media area was, and it was Wayne Gretzky in civvies. He wasn't even playing that day. It was a preseason game. He made the team. He already led the league in scoring in his first year as rookie campaign. I think this was his second year going in. So here he is, and I knew instantly what was going on. The guy had just finished probably a radio or a television interview, and he had to get back to the Oilers dressing room where his teammates were. The only way to do that, however, was he had to walk along the entire concourse to get to the dressing room. And in the case of the corral, the media room was in one diagonal corner of the building, and the dressing room was in the other diagonal corner of the dressing room. So he had to walk down the concourse full of fans, all Calgary Flames fans, mind you, few Oiler fans. He had to walk all the way through the concourse through thousands of people who were lined up for popcorn, ice cream, coffee, cola, you name it. And he had to then go around the corner to the back of the building. Again, that's the end zone, we call it in football. And then finally get to that other diagonal corner where he could then get into the dressing room. I knew he had to do this, so I thought, oh, what an opportunity. I can follow him and just see what's going to happen as the soon-to-be the greatest hockey player to ever play the game, other than Bobby Orr, was going to go through enemy territory, Calgary Flames territory, in a three-piece suit. I thought, oh, man, what's going to happen? Well, Mr. Gretzky is no fool. He is a very smart guy at any age. And at 19, 20 years of age, I think he was 20, if that, he knew what he had to do. He had to hustle it as quick as he could, nonchalant, and by the time fans recognized him, it would be too late. He'd be 10, 15 feet past them, and they couldn't get at him or approach him for an autograph or anything like that. And there was no security. There were no security guards to escort him. There was no police officer with him. There was nothing. He decided he was just going to do this on his own. So here he goes. He's walking, and I get behind him, and I'm following him, and I want to see what's going to happen. And it was fascinating because at this time, I had just turned 25 years old or so, and growing up, and at one time I thought hockey players were gods, and I grew up and began to learn better that they're just normal people like the rest of us, except that they live very public lives, especially at the rink. And I'm following this young man, and I'm thinking to myself, put yourself in his shoes. You are this famous person, infamous in Calgary, of course, because you don't play for this team, and you are going through this audience, and look at the faces of the crowd. It was fantastic. It was fascinating. There were looks of absolute shock, like, oh my God. And then there was the one guy standing beside his buddy, and the one buddy saw him, and the other buddy wasn't paying attention, and the elbow was going, hey, look over here. And he would just go right past, and I would look behind me, and I would see all the faces from the crowd that we had just walked through. They were all watching as he kept on going, and they just realized they were among greatness for that much time. And there were kids and adults and grandmas and grandpas and you name it. I mean, and there were the Oiler fans who had the beaming face, and they just loved their boy. And then there were the diehard Flames fans that would spray paint this guy if they could get the chance, but they didn't have the chance because they had no idea he was coming. They had no idea that it was really him, or was it really sure it was him? And he just scooted. Didn't run, because if he ran, it would make a scene. And he was as athletic as he was, he just went right through there. Now, let's be real. He could handle himself if he had to. Although he was a slight build of a guy, he was in incredible condition. And he could certainly outrun any of us. And I'm sure he could take care of himself. And if there were ever a problem, then security would come there, and he'd be looked after. But there wasn't an issue. There wasn't an incident or anything like that. It was just a fascinating thing to see people's faces go from da-da-da-da to that. Again and again and again. He must have passed 1,000 people through the entire length of the concourse. He got to the dressing room. By the time we got there, I was about 10 feet behind him because I was having trouble keeping up. He was walking fast. He got to the door, he banged on it 3 times, and it was opened immediately. He went right in, and the door slammed right behind him because they weren't taking any chances that anyone's going to throw beer at these guys or anything like that. Well, that's my story of following Wayne Gretzky through the the concourse of the Stampede Corral. A sight that will never happen again. Professional teams today would not be caught dead doing this type of thing. The Flames, of course, played 3 years in that barn. They couldn't wait to get the hell out of there. Although I have to say, in 3 years, they only lost, I think, 30 games. They won 90 and lost 30. Visiting teams hated coming to the Corral because the crowd was right over top of you. It's an old-fashioned hockey rink with only 8,000 seats. You were right in the audience, and they hated it. But the Flames, oh, they were adored and loved, and they had a great run. But the next year after that, they went to the Corral, to the Saddle Dome, I should say, the Olympic Saddle Dome, and 20,000 fans. And here we are 30-odd years later, 30 plus, 35 years later, and the Saddle Dome now is considered an old barn itself, which I find ironic because it's a beautiful facility, but for the 1888 Olympics it was just fine, but for today's Calgary Flames apparently it's not good enough. So there's a big fight going on and a big brouhaha politically and whatever. What are we going to do with the Saddle Dome? And the Flames want a new building, and we're talking $500-600 million, and oh my gosh, the money. But that's another story for another day. So that was my story today. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe to my channel. Let me know what you think. Do you like these stories? You hate them? I'm going to bring out more. And if you have the heart, go to my Patreon page and consider supporting my channel. This is all I do. I don't do anything else. I need the money. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you next time. It's Bruce with Traveling with Bruce. Take care.